All right. Good evening. My name is Kelly Carroll, and I have the pleasure of chairing Bennington's Community Policing Advisory Review Board. Tonight is Thursday, June 20th. It is 6:05 p.m., and we are in the third floor multi-purpose room at 137 River Street in Bennington. 130 River Street, my apologies. So, Will, would you like to read the town vision statement, please?
I would. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda, which consists of the May meeting minutes. So for purpose of discussion, can I get a motion to accept and a second on the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Next is the approval of the previous minutes from last month's meeting. Those were distributed prior to the meeting. So is there any discussion on the minutes? And if not, can I get a motion to accept?
Make a motion, we accept. I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the previous agenda minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Right. Next, we have on the agenda public comment, and there hadn't been anybody that had signed up. So before we started, I just want to check with the people that are here. Is there anybody that would like to speak for public comment? No. Okay. All right. Next on our agenda, we have an update from Chief Paul Doucette on the Bennington Police Department for a staffing update and a brief conversation on e-bike certification. Welcome and thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see all of you on this crazy weather night. We waited all day for the rain to start, and then it came rather abruptly, right during the car show and everything that was going on Main Street. So I appreciate you waiting a few minutes for me to get here. Poor Lieutenant Grandy is out in the middle of the Four Corners directing traffic, and I'm sure he won't be coming here because he's soaked. Just want to talk to you for a few minutes about staffing issues at the Bennington Police Department. It seems like we take a few steps forward and we take a few steps back. Seems to be the way of the world. Yesterday I was at the Police Academy talking to some other of my colleagues from around the state facing the same issues and challenges that we're facing. So Detective Silvestro is going to be retiring as a full-time officer. His last day with us will be July 8th of 2024. So he's just a couple of weeks away from enjoying the retired life. And we wish him well. He's been fantastic with his assignment over at the Child Advocacy Center, and he'll be missed. We do have an officer that will replace him at the Child Advocacy Center. We do receive approximately $60,000 from the state of Vermont each year to assign someone to the Child Advocacy Center, and we have hand-selected someone who has experience from within our agency to go and be the detective over there. And once that all becomes official and they start on the 8th or so of July, we'll make the official announcement on that. So those are that's going to obviously create a gap in the patrol division because we're taking someone from the patrol division and putting them over the Child Advocacy Center as a detective, and with Detective Silvestro leaving, we'll have that gap filled by this particular officer, which still creates problems within the patrol division. We did terminate an employee this week, which we won't get into the details on, not for misconduct or anything, just the inability to complete training at the Vermont Police Academy, and so that creates a gap for us as well. So at this point, at one point we were down 4, and we'll end up going down 6 again. So, you know, we struggle like other agencies around the state. We have seen an increase in interest in our communication staff. We have an offer of hire out to an individual to fill the vacancy within our communication center, and we're actively looking at people for part-time positions within the communication center as well. We also have an offer of hire out to replace my administrative assistant who went to another law enforcement agency within the county. So we've been about 6 weeks now or so without an administrative assistant at the police department, and Lieutenant Grandy have been filling that role as well. And we have had some support from the staff at the town office as well to fill that gap. Our new administrative assistant background investigation is ongoing right now, and we anticipate that this person will be starting with the police department on July 15th. And we think that the person will be a great fit. Again, once all of that is complete, we'll make the announcement who that person is. And we had a lot of great applicants, a lot of interest on the civilian/administrative side of the police department. So we're happy about that. I wish we could get the same response for law enforcement positions, but we still have to fill that gap, and that'll be some conversations that we have in the next coming months as we prepare fiscal year 2026. As you all know, we're in 2024 now. July 1st, it'll be fiscal year 2025. In the beginning of September, we'll start building the budget for fiscal year 2026. And I know a lot of people get confused by that, but that's how it goes. We present to the town manager in November of 2024 for a budget that starts in July of 2025. So we do our best. The select board is generally very supportive of the police department and the fire department with the budgets that we present, and they ask us some tough questions sometimes, but as long as we have the answers, they're supportive. So we need to figure out what we're going to do to draw law enforcement officers to the Bennington Police Department. We're not Fish and Game. We don't give out ATVs and boats. We're not the state police. You don't get a take-home car, and you don't get your health insurance paid for the rest of your life. Our community just can't, afford that. They're getting health insurance for their family for the balance, and we don't have that. So there's a lot of little things that we need to address in the next budget cycle, I think, in order to draw people to the Bennington Police Department on the southern part of the state. Everybody knows how busy we are. You've all heard me talk about it. We make the state's attorney's office busy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We have some great community partners. We do know that, again, the detective position at the CAC will be funded with $60,000. We have a new analyst that started with us that does not come out of any town general fund money. That's paid for through the Vermont Army Guard. We're also working with the United Counseling Service right now to bring another individual to Bennington from the Vermont Army Guard that will have office space, will be our employee technically, salary paid by the Vermont Army Guard, but will be assigned to United Counseling Service, and we'll have an office there, and we'll go out and do outreach, drug outreach in our communities to educate people on the dangers of using drugs and things of that nature. So we're almost done ironing that out with the United Counseling Service, but again, that employee is my responsibility, just like the analyst is my responsibility. And we're also working with PAVE to hopefully bring an advocate to the Bennington Police Department. We all know that most all of the violent calls that we are responsible for and that we respond to are domestic related. A lot of that information came out when we were starting to look at some of the violent crimes that were happening in and around Bennington. And we all know that domestic violence is a huge issue in Vermont and the Bennington area. In fact, this year, 2024, it is mandatory. All law enforcement officers in Vermont must have domestic violence training And the Academy did a great job this year. I was there yesterday along with Lieutenant Grandy. There's 3 different types of training. There's domestic violence training for administrators, there's domestic violence training for supervisors, and then there's domestic violence training for the patrol officers that are out on the road responding to the calls. So the training yesterday went for about 4 hours and 15 minutes, and it was very, very educational. We will be developing a new policy. It has to be in place by July 1st. I have it almost done. It's a statewide mandatory policy on domestic violence response. And so there's a lot. There's definitely a lot going on, and you know, we want to make sure that we're hiring the right people and that we're hiring people that actually want to be here and fulfill their obligations. You know, when you receive an offer of hire, it tells you the steps that you need to take to retain your position, and we're going to hold people accountable for that. So, any questions on that?
I had a couple. As far as attracting applicants for the police officer positions, is it mainly compensation-based that's the challenge, or is there something else?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, Jeff. Some of it's compensation, you know, some of it's benefits after the fact, you know, upon retirement. Housing is an issue, for sure. I mean, we've heard it, we've talked about it, whether it's the law enforcement side, the Bennington Rescue Squad, the SVSU, trying to hire teachers and things like that. You know, housing certainly is an issue. I mean, we have officers that live an hour from here, from Bennington. Would like to live closer, but you know, it's finding a home that you can afford. We all know, and I'm not going to stand here and lecture you on this, we all know what COVID did. You know, people coming into our communities and buying homes, and people can't just, you know, your $175,000 home going for $300,000. You know, when this market levels out, and it will, when the market levels out and these homes go back to their original value of $700,000 and you're upside down, what do you do then? So some people are smart and they rent outside of the area where they can find a place to rent that's reasonable.
Is there any, if you know, I understand if you're in town and close by, but if you're over a certain distance of a drive, to help cover that with a mileage type expense, you know, if they're driving an hour, there's a real risk of losing them to another closer agency, isn't there? If they found something closer where they're not spending all that money on vehicle costs.
Yeah, I mean, but this is not uncommon. I mean, you know, the police chief in Hartford, Vermont, lives in Rutland,
Yeah.
and drives back and forth every day. You know, that's just one example. You know, I look at, you know, at Rutland City Police Department, and you know, they paid retention bonuses. They've done things to compensate their officers to keep them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's no offense. Again, the select board's been supportive, the town manager's been supportive, but we have to start looking at what other agencies are doing in an effort to retain our people here. We put a lot of money into these people to get them trained and get them to where they need to be.
And if you're under your budget number for officers, isn't there potentially money that isn't being paid to those officers? It could be used for some other creative way to retain or recruit.
Right, and that's something that we need to address this fall.
All right.
And this winter.
And then my other question was, and I understand that you're below your target number, but is your goal to only get to the target number, or should there be a goal of above the target number with some attrition expected over time? So, you know, if you need X number plus 10% or something, that if you can look at historically, you've lost so many every so often, wouldn't it, in an understanding, ideally you just want to be fully staffed at this point, but is there budgetary allowance to go beyond that so that when you do lose some people, you're not in the hole?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a wise way of doing things, but I can tell you that, you know, in the last 15 years or so, I mean, we struggled to get to that number.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is, we get close and then we take a few steps back, as I already said. I mean, it would be wise to do an assessment of the call volume that we see here within the town of Bennington, and then look at other agencies in the county, and perhaps even on the east side of the state, and see what where they're at. We used to base the number of police officers we have on population.
Yeah.
But when I started here, we were doing 5,000 or 6,000 calls a year, and now we're doing almost 13,000 calls for service a year, and our numbers have never changed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're doing, we're doing twice the work, a little bit more, and our numbers don't change, right? So we need to take a serious look at that. But then you don't want to build the budget so high that it becomes offensive to people.
Sure.
When we can't fill we can fill them, but then they become vacant again. And you're right. I mean, through attrition, over the next probably 2 to 5 years, I can think of, in preparation for this, so I don't have to think about it, there are 4 officers that can retire. And we need to take a serious look at that and say, oh my goodness, where are we going to be? The world of regionalized policing isn't going to work, necessarily for us, because there's not another full-time police agency in the area, within 25 minutes. And the next closest is Manchester. And I mean, Pownell doesn't have a police department. Shaftesbury, Arlington, they're covered by the Vermont State Police, and they have, thin coverage also.
Right.
I mean, they're hurting for staff also.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on staffing? Okay. So, you were talking about retention bonuses and things like that. Would that be something that would have to go through the bargaining agreement?
Retention bonuses don't have to go through the bargaining unit.
You could just.
That's something that we could discuss with Mr. Hurd, and then we can discuss with the select board. I mean, even if it's even feasible, we have to take a look at where we end this year with our budget. I mean, because we have to be straightforward and let everybody know. I mean, with our minimum shift staffing hours, we had to obviously pay overtime to cover shifts, and people are like, well, how come there's only 3 people on? How come you can't do? Well, because that's the minimum staffing. Honestly, without going too far out there, I mean, our minimum staffing should be a minimum of 4, and but people do have earned time. People become ill, and they take time off, and a lot of times, we're having to fill that. I know in Rutland City, they were having such an issue with getting shifts, just regular shifts covered, never mind details or extra duty assignments. They were paying double time. And I'm certainly not suggesting that, because then you go through your money very quickly. But there's got to be some motivation. I mean, we recently, on the last 6 months or so, switched to 12-hour shifts. The officers are getting, they have every other weekend off, which is nothing I experienced when I was a patrol officer, but I certainly support it because family time is important. But we have other things that are going on in Bennington. The hospital is extremely busy. I'd love to detail an officer there every single day. But, staffing-wise, we just don't have that. But, we work on it. I'd like to put an officer in the high school every day, but staffing doesn't allow that. So, there's a lot of things that we would like to do, but it's difficult.
Okay, so I know we've talked in the past about maybe doing some comparisons with calls, so that might be a regional, like 5 or 6 locations to try to figure out, to look at that. And that, the domestic violence policy, that's a brand-new policy?
Well, we already have
You have one, right?
policy in place.
It's just updating it for the 3 years.
This is a statewide policy so that all law enforcement agencies are on the same page.
So statewide, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Question about the calls per officer analysis. Is that something that we could do? I mean, part of the charge of CPARB is to analyze these things, is to examine this data.
We're looking at data now.
Okay.
You know, the Valcor system is much easier to use as far as retrieving data than the former system, the Spillman system. So, you know, we're looking at that now and looking at call volumes and different times of day and where we're responding to most frequently and things like that. So that's something we can look at and, you know, probably in a couple of months be able to give you some real data on you know, without names and things like that.
Sure.
Give you some real data on the types of calls and what we're doing and things like that. Cam's getting really good at that.
Yeah, what I was asking though was not that you analyze it, but that we analyze it. And I don't know about confidentiality there, and it sounds like, I mean, we'd have to look at it more, but that would assist you.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I think we can give you, you know, as far as confidentiality, I mean, we can tell you the types of calls we're going on, how many we're going on, times a day, and things like that, and you can look at that. You know, I don't think we necessarily have to stand here and reveal, you know, we went to John Smith's house.
Oh, goodness, no, it's all anonymous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I guess I was wondering about assisting you in that process, given lean staffing and precious time, resources. And so that's part of what I'm asking. And because it's not fully clear to me how much agency we have and how much in terms of that kind of probing and analysis. So that's all I was asking, is whether or not you could use us to help you analyze that. You've got the data, but scarce time. So is that even possible? And I don't know that it is, and so part of it's a curious question.
I think that's possible, but I think what I would also like to see is some statewide data. And I would like to see, say, like, you know, Brattleboro, St. Albans, maybe Rutland, or some, you know, maybe like 4 or 5 communities about the same size as ours, whereas we would not have access to Brattleboro's data, but we would have town A, B, C, and say D has, you know, X number of officers, has X number of calls, whether you can break down those types of calls into, you know, certain levels or not. But I think if we could get that data, then we could also help with the justification on staffing levels if it's something where you need to, because you're up to 13,000 calls and that staffing level has stayed stagnant.
Anyway, we can continue to talk about that.
We can have that conversation down the road, sure.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on staffing updates for e-bike certification?
Yeah, it's a great topic, and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but so I know, you know, we have our e-bikes there. We still have, including the lieutenant and I, we still have 5 people that are certified to use bicycles out on patrol. We have tried to bring training to the Bennington area, and finding an instructor is difficult. So we continue to work on that. This is the time of year, and sometimes we see more bicycle training in the fall when it's a little bit cooler. I would hate to go to bicycle training this week, and but with the heat. But at the same time, there is necessary training. It's not as simple as saying, hey, I'm 22 years old and I can ride a bike. It doesn't work like that. Bicycle patrol school, there's a lot of different techniques that are taught. There's actually firearms training that goes along with bicycle patrol training, and it is a 40-hour block of instruction and training rides that where you ride each day approximately 25 miles. And I know you're thinking, oh, you know, e-bikes, there's a lot of confusion out there. People think that e-bikes have throttles. And, anybody can ride it because you just crank the throttle. And our e-bikes are not with a throttle. Our e-bikes are designed with pedal assist. And they will move right along. And we have the special helmets that go with the e-bikes. And you do see us out on the e-bikes during special events. Most recently at Mayfest, when we were working the Mayfest detail, people inquired, where are your e-bikes? Well, e-bikes are okay in the morning before Mayfest fills up, as an example. But you don't want to ride your e-bike out on Main Street when there's all those people, So it's something that is that we're really trying to get. We do have officers that are interested. It's just like ATV Patrol just met with, as another example, just met with a lieutenant from Fish and Game. They actually have instructors on staff so that we can make sure that we train more people, with the ATVs. One of the first things that you see if you've ever been injured at work, there's a first report of injury form. And on there's a question, were you trained, blah, blah, blah. And you don't want to check the box, no. So if you have somebody that, crashes on an e-bike or gets hurt using an ATV and they didn't receive proper training, there's a liability to the town and an insurance payout. So, we want to make sure that people are being properly trained. And so that's something that Lieutenant Grandy and I keep a close eye on. There are trainings out in Utah and out in California, but we're not in a position to send our people way out there for that type of training. So we're watching the New England region, specifically over in New Hampshire and down in Massachusetts, to see if we can find some training that we can send people off to this summer, and we're hopeful that will happen.
Well, I know we'll get into more comments when we talk about the listening sessions, but it is a common comment to hear. We'd like to see more foot patrols. We'd like to see more, bike patrols. And I think it's important for people to know that not just any officer can hop on one of those bikes.
Right.
And to know that when there's training that's required, people support getting that training so that the officers can do that.
Right.
So.
And I think, again, going back to the select board, I know Mr. Haley questioned me on it when we presented this upcoming budget. We wanted to make sure that we left the money alone in the training budget, and so the money that was taken away, that I think was $3,000, was put back in, because that's one of the things that we want to accomplish is getting more people certified. We do have some younger guys that would love to jump on the e-bikes and get out on patrol. And if you've ever been to a metropolitan area, the officers ride in packs. You'll see 4 to 6 officers riding, and they'll come up to an intersection, they'll see different things, they break off and do law enforcement related things. So it is something that we're working on, and we'd like to get more people trained. So we're watching for that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
I'll be here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So next on the agenda is the community listening session, a recap and what's on next steps. I know we've done a few of them this month. We have one more scheduled at two more, one at the Senior Center tomorrow and one at
The
Ethiopian
Community
ECDC.
Development Center.
Yep, on Saturday. So, Kate, do you want to, I know you've summarized some of the comments. Do you want to
Be happy to.
recap?
Yep. We had one at Turning Point, Community Cafe, Willowbrook, and Beach Court. Those were in May. And we had no attendees at Beach Court. And one of the things that has come up, as Kelly mentioned, is that people would really like to see more foot patrol and bike patrol. Particularly the folks in Willowbrook said that would be really nice, because their concern is that residents don't know the officers, and that there's a lot of hesitancy and some suspicion back and forth. The other thing that's come up is that there's a distinction that some folks make between the new hires, the younger officers, and the older folks in terms of the relationship with the community. And some of that actually got echoed today at the listening session that we had with is it the BBC?
Yeah, with the Better Bennington Corporation and the Chamber of Commerce
Chamber.
this morning.
Yeah, which was good to hear. I mean, these are all business people, and they saw a bit of that difference as well. But overall, people seem to be really supportive of the police. They're not clear at all what we do. They have no clue about what community policing is, but they're interested in that. That's one of the overall takes that I've got. Lindsay, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think what I would add is both at Turning Point and at the Willowbrook listening session, people weren't quite sure how to give feedback about their experiences with BPD, so that is something as well that I think that we can take away how to make that more common knowledge.
Yeah. One of the things that came up this morning that struck me that I hadn't heard is that folks were genuinely surprised that officers were volunteering for the program. They presumed that, like the bike program or the backpack program, they presumed that everybody was paid. And so we had to disabuse them of that and try to explain that, no, there wasn't money in the budget for that, and that many of the officers volunteered for those programs, and because they would like to see more of them. But that's a limitation of time. And obviously, since we've lost 2 more officers, one through retirement and one, it's a challenge.
The other thing that I took away this morning, or that was a common theme, is they would, the merchants in downtown would like to see more of a police presence as far as walking up and down, particularly walking, even if it's just once a day or once every couple of days during peak hours. And for a couple of reasons. Number one, they feel that it can be a nice deterrent for possible shoplifting, because if you see an officer around, you might think twice before doing something, so in a preventative kind of way. And then also as far as relationship building and getting into that more community-based model with engagement and getting to know the officers.
Yeah.
So I found him very supportive. I talked with one person afterwards, and they had said that on the times that they did have to go, that they had issues and had to go to the police department, that everyone there had always treated them with the utmost respect, that they were well-informed and appreciative of the way they were treated on that, so. And I think it was a common theme a lot through most of the ones that I went, that people just do want to see more of the officers and get to know them, and I think that's a good thing.
And the question that we had asked, how would it make you feel safer to see, that came through, that residents really felt that it would make them personally feel safer if they saw more of a police presence in their community.
Yeah. That was actually echoed this morning when several business owners talked about how the increased traffic in the summer, particularly from kids, and that they were concerned about that, because it's hard to keep track of all of that when there's a lot of people on the streets. So.
I don't want to forget, there was one thing that the residents at Willowbrook did want us to mention. There is a footpath, Chief Doucette, between Willowbrook and Applegate, and they really, really would like to have that patrolled or at least lit. It seems to be a big area of disturbance for the residents, at least at Willowbrook.
So we've got, as Kelly said, we've got 2 more one at the senior center, and then at ECDC on Saturday. And then I'll collect all the information, all the comments, put them in a file, and share this with Lindsay, and we're going to take a look at that in July. So we won't have any kind of update for you in July, because we're going to analyze that and see what are the common themes that we come out of that with. And then we'll present that at our August meeting. Are there any questions that you have about the listening sessions, about the plan that we've got? Anybody on the board or the audience?
I will say we got invited back several times. Several of the locations we went to, we got invited back. People were happy to see, just an opportunity to talk and to get the communication going, and I took that as a positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
All right. So we'll take a look at the data in August, and then we'll determine next steps, if we're going to modify any questions, what we're going to take a look at for going forward. That will determine that.
One other thing that came up, and I just forgot about it. One of the gentlemen that was there this morning talked about asked us what our strategic plan was, what our strategic goal was. And I responded, we were hoping to get it out of the listening sessions to have some direction on that, but so far I haven't picked up anything, because we have no control over budget or hiring or anything like that, but we'll take a look and see what next steps we have.
But I do think there are things we can make recommendations on if
Absolutely.
that's good. So, okay. All right, so if there's no other comments, anyone on the listening sessions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a committee reorganization discussion. So the charges for the three committees that we have a research committee, an outreach committee, and a communications committee. And these were things that we had set up right at the beginning when CPARB was first started. So we started back in 2022. And with the change in board members and how we're functioning or what we're looking at, it seems like it's a good time to kind of take a look at these and say, okay, is this still relevant? Does it need to be modified? Does it need to be removed and replaced with something else? Do they need to be consolidated? The reason originally that we had done smaller groups was just to be able to do some functionality in between meetings without violating open meeting law. So each committee has two members on it, and then I try to coordinate the information for the meetings that come out. So the outreach committee, the charge is to collect the data from the community regarding community members' experiences with and perception of the Bennington Police Department, to provide the board with information to be used in making recommendations regarding training and policies. So I think that this is something that we should take a look at and be prepared to say in the July meeting, when there is board reorganization, I think we should come back and make recommendations. Like, do we need to do this, or is this, does this overlap with things that research is doing, or do we feel that this is even relevant for what we're doing now? The same thing with the research review and oops, I have a typo in here. The last one is communications, not research. You can tell where I copied and pasted. That one's a little bit more detailed, so looking for feedback as to whether or not those other two should be modified. So any comments or? Kate?
I don't understand why the outreach committee is collecting, they're not collecting data, they would be collecting information that turns into data. So that's one point there. But when I conceptualize an outreach committee, it's going out into the community and talking to folks, or visiting, like to the chamber, to the community cafe occasionally. I'm not talking about somebody doing it every month, that's too onerous. But, yeah, but, to do that sort of in a systematic way, to visit, I mean, that's outreach. Because that then communicates to the community, to those folks who are there, what community policing is, what it isn't, what we do, what we don't do, that can answer questions, you know. I have been doing research for probably close to 35 years. I didn't even understand what that research committee, what those words meant. So, because it doesn't seem like, and forgive me, but it'd be nice if it was in English. And because it's too academic inside, it's like a bunch of scientists, academics talking to one another, yeah. Anyway, so I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I'm not going to take over, but and the communications committee again. Why are they doing research? Why are they collecting data? To conduct a periodic survey. That's a research committee function. But also, it seemed to me that we're small enough that all of these should have work with. So it's not that you have to meet with, but you have to work with, so that we're not at cross purposes at all. And so the right hand always knows what the left hand is doing. It just, I don't know.
No, I wonder.
So, obviously, I've been thinking about this for a while.
I wonder if we even need the committees. I mean, is it better to say, okay, we're not going to have an outreach or research and a communications committee, yet we're going to have the listening session project. And as that listening session project goes, we need to have this, and that done. And in order to get this done, these people will work on that for this project. And maybe it's more of a project-based versus just.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about.
Or maybe it's a combination of both.
Well, I mean,
But,
certainly for the listening sessions, to have had more interaction with other members of the board versus just Lindsay, I, and me, and you, Kelly. Because that way we could have potentially coordinated better communication and better outreach.
Right.
We just more long-term outreach, I should have said.
We just have to be careful because of open meetings.
Absolutely.
So that's.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I think, anything that we can change, streamline, make more effective to what we're doing now, I think is worth looking at and updating.
Yeah. What do other folks feel? I mean, what's your sense of that? Do you think it's functioning the way it is, or?
I think it functions the way it is, but I do like Kelly's idea of having things project-based, and that actually gives people more opportunity to do different things. Like Jeff and I have been on the communications committee, so we do communications, and that's kind of like what we do. So it'd be nice to dip into other things as well, and with everything being project-based, that would give everybody the opportunity, like we meet with Jonah Spivak a lot, email or in person. And, it would be nice for Jonah to spend time with everybody on the board, not just Jeff and I. So I do like the project-based plan that you were discussing.
Would the projects, and this is, I'm just curious, would the projects be identified early on, like maybe in some sort of a strategic plan or something, that these are going to be the things that we're going to work on this year, and go from there? Or is it sort of organic how they come up? What's your sense of that?
I would think they would be more organic.
Okay.
We may start one project, and while we're working on it, come up with 3 other projects that may be offshoots, all fully related, but just different enough to make it a different project. So, yeah, I don't know if we could really define like a set of projects, or maybe we do. Maybe we set this is what we would like to accomplish for the next 12 months. And, and then revise those as we go if needed, but I do like kind of more of an organic type, less structured way of doing things. And we are a small group, so we should be able to shift focus fairly quickly.
Yeah. And that was some of my concern with these, was that they were really tight, really structured, very prescriptive about what people did. And I'll go back to a question that I had when Paul was talking, the chief was talking about how much agency do we actually have? Because these are really prescriptive. So it'd be nice if it were a little bit more open and organic in that way.
I think it has to be a combination. I think there has to be something like, for example, we're going to do 2 or 3 listening sessions a year. That would be something. And then the other items would also be, organic, based on what happens and what's going on and,
Sure.
in town and in the
Or
world.
we have to respond to them.
Yep. All right. So we'll have suggestions prepared for July's meeting, right? And if anybody has any suggestions or something they want submitted, please send them to me and I'll pass them along. I'll make sure they get into the packet. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on committee reorganization?
I do have one question. Again, I go back, how much agency do we have? I spoke to Jonah about some of the communication stuff, because I was a bit concerned when nobody showed up at the library and nobody showed up at Beach Court. Just concerned about, do we have the power to post things on like something like Front Porch? And this comes out of a question that you had of me toward us last month. And the meetings are posted, the time and everything is posted on Front Porch, but sounds like they're not maybe as visible or something, or as easily seen as some other parts. I'm not familiar with Front Porch, but do we have agency in that in terms of communication? Or is it all, and this maybe is a question for you, Tom, do we always go through Jonah for all communications? Or
Yeah, right now we always go through Jonah.
Okay.
So basically, the town office does the postings in the banner, on our website, and on Front Porch Forum.
Okay.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we wanted to put something else on Front Porch Forum, I think we could do it. We would just have to take the ownership on that and do that. I don't think that would be one of Jonah's functions. But as far as I know, there's nothing that would prevent us from
It's,
doing that.
yeah, it's basically all the boards, all the communication coming out from the town goes through the communications coordinator.
The town office does
That's
it.
true of the select board, that's true of the planning commission, that's true of anybody you can think of. And there are a few different good reasons for that, and that's and a lot of it has to do with speaking with a united voice, with one voice as the town, because we are all a function of town government. So the town government's voice is the communications coordinator in most cases. There are a few different times where, listening sessions, you are communicating at that point. But as far as things going out to the wider community, that's the reason we really created the communications coordinator position, was because there was a hodgepodge of things going out from a bunch of different people, and it actually ended up creating a lot of confusion. So by channeling everything through Jonah knows everything that's going on and can let you know if that's going to, clash with other things like that. And it also, it speaks with one solid voice, so people know if it came through that office, that it's officially something from the town.
I'm wondering, though, if it goes through Jonah and it's an official communication, if then you could use that official communication and just share it on your own, if that would make more sense. Like, obviously, if something's shared on Facebook, you can reshare it. I believe, like, you could probably repost the original posting through Front Page Forum, and maybe you would have a wider audience than it just being out there. I think that might be more acceptable.
Yeah, I share
Yeah.
posts on social media from the town on my personal, on occasion. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's when you start.
I think as long as it's whatever has been approved by the communication coordinator, then you could reshare that.
And I think you'll agree, Jonah doesn't just approve things. I mean, he does work with the committees and the boards to get out the message that they want to
We work with
get
him
out.
to tell him what we wanted to say, and we come up with a draft together. And before he posts anything, he sends it back to us for final approval. So we can tell him what we want to say, he can post it, and then, anybody could share it. You could share it to some of the Bennington Blotter and different sites like that where they have like 10 or 13,000 members. But as long as we don't modify anything, I think it would be fine if we shared it.
Yeah. That's the beauty of social media, right? Everyone has their own audience and their own reach. So it actually makes sense that if we were to each share the same message, we would reach a larger audience.
Any other questions or comments, concerns on that? All right. So next on the agenda is upcoming agenda items. And in July, we are hoping, if everything goes well, to have the communications staff from the police department doing an informational education portion for us on what they do. I will say when we go through training for CPARB and they talk about all of the different communications and agencies and the maps that they cover, it's very, very informative. So hopefully staffing will be where it needs to be, and we'll have them here in July. We'll also have board reorganization. Next month, we will have a new member on the board, and this is Will's last meeting with us. So I just want to, before we go on to any other announcements or anything, I just wanted to thank him for his 2 years of service to the board, and for all of his assistance and everything that he's done. So thank you. Any other announcements? Anything?
I'm going to do the adjournment. Don't worry.
Okay, all right. So before we have a motion to adjourn, did you want to say anything?
I can. I was going to move to adjournment real quick, but I did write a little, parting words, a little farewell address, but just to say that I'm grateful to members of CPARB, both past and present, for their service to the town and to be able to work with you all, as well as our police department for their collaboration with us. It's been an honor to be part of this board the past 2 years. And what's funny is how it started out being part of my college education. And so in a way, I've not just sat here over 2 years, not that any of us have, and just kind of, stayed the same. I feel like I've really grown and I've learned in so many ways. But definitely leaving here knowing that you guys are going to continue the work of the mission of the board, and just knowing that it's really shaped my character. And I hope I have the opportunity to serve again. But for now, I'll see you later. And I moved to adjourn at 6:59. I've never done that before, so this is my first adjournment.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Say aye. Okay. Opposed, abstentions, thank you very much. We are adjourned. Our next meeting will be Thursday, July 18th at 6 p.m. in this very room on the third floor of the Bennington Firehouse on River Street. Thank you very much and have a great day.